Welcome to my 10-minute deep stretch for hikers, runners, and people who spend all day on their feet. Follow along with me in real time as I move through the 9 poses I recommend for people who hike, run, and walk a lot. When we run or walk, we move in a linear, repetitive motion, which can strengthen our muscles but leave them tight and prone to injury. Not to mention, the repetitive motion can have an impact on our connective tissue, including fascia, tendons, and ligaments, which can also get tight. That's why the more you hike and run, the tighter your legs and hips feel. So let's dive right in. Our first pose is going to be a standing forward fold. This will help lengthen the back body, including the calves and hamstrings and even glutes. Stand with your feet, hips width distance apart, and begin to hinge forward, sending the pelvis forward, leaning forward. You want to bring the belly to the thighs. A slight bend in the knees here is really helpful if you don't already have a lot of hamstring mobility. You can also lift up halfway and flatten the spine to really create the perfect position before we fold forward. I understand your pose is probably not going to look like mine since I've been doing this quite frequently. So go ahead and see how I bend my knees and send my glutes just back a little bit to create a nice fold. Then you can slowly start working on straightening your legs. Go ahead and slowly release out of this position and make your way onto your knees on the ground. We're going to start by taking bilateral low crescent lunges. So on your left knee, come onto your right foot, bending the right knee into a low lunge. But in this low lunge, I want you to send your hips forward, pressing forward, leaning into the front leg, allowing the hip flexor of the left leg to really lengthen. When we walk and run a lot, our hip flexor gets really tight because it's used to our knee coming up and in front. So focus on sending the hips forward like you're trying to reach them down towards the mat. And if you need some extra support, you can also bring the forearms and elbows down onto that front knee just to give yourself a little bit of support. Slowly making your way out of this pose, we'll switch to the left side. And here it's okay to send the pelvis forward in an interior tilt because that will really open the hip flexor of the extended leg. So this might feel a little bit counterintuitive, but I assure you to really open and deepen the hip flexor opening, you can definitely create a small back bend in the low spine. Slowly make your way out of this pose, and we're going to come back onto the right leg and do a lizard lunge, which is even deeper than the low crescent lunge. So for here, we're going to send our hips as far forward as possible, come down onto our palms. We want our palms to be on the inside of the right knee. It's okay if the right knee kind of falls open to the side if you roll out onto the outer edge of the right foot, but the goal is to have the front knee kind of facing the front of the room to really deepen the stretch. From here, you can drop down onto your forearms onto a block, or even bring the forearms down onto a mat. Here is an optional, really intense quadriceps stretch, so you can reach the right arm back while bending the left knee and pulling the heel into the glute. This is going to be extremely intense for most people. Only do this if this doesn't feel super painful. We'll go ahead and switch sides and come onto the lizard lunge onto the left. Since we've already done a lot of hip flexor opening, the lizard lunge can be just a little bit shorter here. So we're going to send the hips down into the mat, come onto our palms or onto our forearms, and really open the hips some more. Make your way out of this pose and onto your feet. We'll be taking a pyramid pose. So a nice narrow stance, and our hips want to be facing the front of the room, toes facing the 12 o'clock position. Go ahead and bring your body forward into a fold while pushing the weight into your heel and into your glutes. You can kind of send the glutes back. You'll see here how I'm kind of centered over the weight. And for you, you might not be able to fold here, but our goal is to fold forward and really send our hips back, lengthening into that right hamstring really deeply. Sometimes I like to add some pulsing here to really accentuate the stretch here, so feel free to do that as well. And then we'll go ahead and switch sides. And you'll notice that it feels like we're moving through some of these poses quite rapidly because we're only holding them for about 30 seconds aside. And that's because I know everyone's busy. We have a lot going on in our lives. So ideally these poses would be held for at least 1 minute, but I think 30 seconds still provides a ton of benefits. Next, we'll make our way down onto our knees or onto a seat for our hip opening poses, pigeon pose. From here, you will come onto your knees and you will bring your right knee into your chest, folding it across your body so your right foot will be on the left side of your mat. I also like to take a block under the right hip here to really keep the hips facing forward. Left leg will be facing back behind you. Hips want to be facing forward. This is very important. And then if possible, we want to start folding down. You'll feel an intense stretch of the right hip here, which is exactly where we want to be. It might begin to feel quite intense, but I assure you that hip opening poses are super important because we don't even realize how tight our hips are. Here, if you really feel you want to add some tension to the stretch, we will come into full pigeon or fire logs pose. From here, I'm going to cue the left side because it's easier to maneuver. We'll fold the left leg over top of the right, almost like we're sitting crisscross style, but we'll have the left leg lay on top of the right leg. And this will really, really deepen the stretch of the left hip. And if you're happy in pigeon prep pose, I want you to stay there. I don't want you to feel you have to go into a deeper variation if you are feeling some good benefits already. And slowly unwind, we'll begin to switch sides, starting with pigeon prep on the left. So left knee forward, ankle across to the right side of the mat. See where I place the block here to keep the hips facing forward before I fold my chest down. And if you're taking the second variation of double pigeon, you can go ahead and sit up, cross the right leg over the left, and begin to fold from here to deepen the stretch of the right hip. If you're happy staying in pigeon prep, don't move, just stay in the juices. Make your way out of your pigeon pose, and we're going to make our way into a malasana squat or yogi squat. I like to offer a block here to go under the hips. So walk the feet wider than the shoulders and sink down into a super deep squat. I'll show you from the front and from behind here. Sitting on a block or a book or a pillow is really helpful for those of you who have never done this before. And if you're feeling really comfortable, remove the block and allow the hips to open. This is going to open adductors and deep pelvic muscles here. Think of using your elbows to push out into your knees to really open the knees, kind of like a book. Activate the glutes by squeezing your glutes in to really open the knees. Next, we will slowly release up from our yogi squat and come to the mat on our knees. We'll be taking frog pose, which is debatably one of the most intense poses that I do personally in my practice. Bring the knees wide on the mat. You want to create a 90-degree angle from the ankles, the knees, and the hips. So the feet will go out at a 90-degree angle, and the knees will be bent at a 90-degree angle, and the hips will be out at a 90-degree angle. You'll see here from a side view here what the goal is if big old chunky boy wouldn't get out of the way. Really think of releasing down into this pose and allowing your hips to just fall. You're going to feel a nice, intense, deep stretch here of the entire hip and pelvis, like connection area. Just breathe through it. And when you come out of frog pose, be very careful. You'll feel very tender. Some people rock forward and backwards to kind of get out of this pose. And when you're ready, we'll make our way into a seated position. We'll come into seated forward fold. Just like we did with our standing forward fold, we're going to be doing this from a seated position because I cannot stress enough how amazing this pose is for you. Start with some bent knees and bring the belly down onto the thighs. It doesn't matter how far you have to bend your knees. That to me is the best starting place. From there, you can slowly start working your knees in the back of your legs down towards the mat to really begin to lengthen the back body here. Breathe into this pose. It is so amazing for the back body. It is so neglected in our forward motion of our lives. Slowly rise up, and we're going to make our way into our final pose. We're almost there. Make your way onto your back. Bend the knees in, bring them up to the chest. Reach for the outer edges of each foot with each respective arm, pulling the knee down into the armpit, opening the hips, creating a box shape with the legs, and allowing the low back to press down into the mat. This is an active pose. And begin to just pull the legs open, rock back and forth side to side here like a happy baby. This is one of my favorite poses to do my diaphragmatic breathing, which will help release pelvic floor muscles, which is amazing for those of us who carry our tension around in our hips. And that's about it. Whenever you're ready, you can make your way out of this pose. I'd love to hear your feedback on if this felt beneficial for you, where you felt tight, and where you can go from here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.